Hey guys, it's Darwin here with my weekly Q&A to answer more of your questions. If you want to ask a question for next week's Q&A, you can leave your question in the comment box below or send me a video question, a video of you asking me a question over to darwinonthetrail@yahoo.com, and then next week I'll feature your video question in my Q&A. Alright, so let's get started. 2 questions. What do you think the average weight of packs were for most hikers on the AT? And what do you think the percentage of people was that were filming and documenting their thru-hike experience with a camera, at least a GoPro? So, 2 really good questions. Number 1, I think the average pack weight, if I had to take a guess, would probably be between 25 and 30 pounds. In 2015, my base weight was 16 pounds, and then with food and water, I was right under 25 pounds. That was pretty typical for me. And then in 2016, my base weight was right at 11 pounds, and that weight came down to about 20 pounds fully loaded with food and water. But I would say that the average is probably between 25 and 30, maybe even a little bit more. There's a lot of people that go out and do a thru-hike, especially when they're starting, that are probably going to be taking too much stuff, and then also probably carrying too many days worth of food when they start out, so their pack weights are probably going to be a little bit higher. As you're doing a thru-hike, your pack weight becomes significantly lower because you learn of the things that you really need and what you don't, and then you can also figure out easier ways to do resupply to where you only have to carry 3 to 4 days of food, so that weight also comes down pretty substantially. And for your second question, I think I seen a handful of people in 2015 and 2016 documenting their thru-hike. Of course, I did in 2016. I filmed a lot of it, but I think a lot of people are pretty private about filming their thru-hike. So at least I was. You know, I tried to do most of my filming and getting video whenever there wasn't a lot of people around. Number 1, I didn't want to disturb other people's hikes. And the second reason is I kind of just wanted it to be me. So there's probably a lot of other people actually documenting their hike. You just probably wouldn't know unless you asked them or seen them filming. With that question being asked, this Thursday I'm actually doing a new video on if you should or if you shouldn't film your thru-hike. So make sure you check that new video out on Thursday because I'll be giving a lot of pros and cons into filming or not filming. I'm planning a thru-hike with my 9-year-old son. I want to keep his pack weight low so I could carry his pack for moral reasons if needed. Right now we're planning for him to carry a sleep system, clothes, and his food. Is there anything else he should have? Good question. So first off, really cool that you're taking your 9-year-old son out for a thru-hike. I wish I had parents that were that cool when I was a kid. Second of all, I think it's really cool that you're having him carry his food and his sleep system, especially food though, so he can get used to carrying that weight, and then, you know, that'll teach him for the future if he ever plans on doing one by himself. But I would think that the 3 other things that you would have him carry would be number 1, water. You definitely make sure he has water, so just in case you guys get separated, he has it on him, so he's not, you know, getting thirsty or getting dehydrated. Number 2 would be a first aid kit. Have him carry a first aid kit because, again, you never know if you could possibly get separated. It's pretty rare that you get separated out on the AT, but just in case it happens, make sure he has a first aid kit if he has to take care of something. And number 3 would probably be a small pocket knife. Again, if something were to happen, it would be nice for him to be able to obviously be hydrated, take care of any first aid problems that he needs, and be able to have a knife just in case he has to cut something or maybe cut somebody. But again, that's really awesome that you're planning a thru-hike for you and your 9-year-old son. Good luck in your planning and have a fun and awesome hike. Have you and Snuggles ever done any winter camping in the snow? I'm from Michigan and we're just about done with it all for this year. We haven't done a lot of camping in the snow. We've done a little bit. We had some snow in the Smokies on our thru-hike in 2015, and then I have personally done a little bit of winter camping, but not a lot. It's actually something we've been wanting to get more into now that we've gotten into snowshoeing and a little bit of alpine hiking. So in the future, we'll probably get into more snow camping. Snow's not exactly my favorite, and winter's not exactly my favorite time of the year, hence why I live in the desert, even though it does snow here. So I try to stay out of it as much as possible, but I am interested in getting into some winter camping in the future. So maybe I'll make some videos in the next handful of years of me trying to do some winter camping. When you hiked the AT with Snuggles, did you each carry your own pot but just one stove? How did mealtime typically go? So in 2015 and 2016 on the AT, we carried one stove, a Snow Peak Light Max stove, which is a little foldable one. I'll put a link of my cook system right here if you guys want to check that out. And then Snuggles and I both carried our own separate pots. So I carried a Snow Peak 700 milliliter titanium mug, and then Snuggles carried a 600 milliliter. We pretty much just traded back and forth. So even though we had one stove, you know, it would just go back and forth. The first night I would cook my dinner first, which usually was just boiling water and then adding it to a rice side or instant mashed potatoes. And then the next night Snuggles would do hers, and we would just trade off to keep it fair. Now most of the time when one of us was boiling water and making dinner, the other one would take care of some other camp chores, like maybe setting up the tent, getting out their sleeping bag, and getting ready to make camp. So we were constantly going back and forth, but trying to keep it fair. The reason we took one stove is obviously we wanted to keep our weight down, but again, you know, we were together the entire time, so there was never a time where we really needed separate stoves. And then the other thing was I carried the stove and then Snuggles carried the fuel, so we were able to separate it and make it fair for both of us to pack equal amount of weight. Sunglasses. What do you do on bright sunny days? As a fellow glasses wearer, I've grown tired of carrying clip-ons, taking them on and off. I've given up and just deal. What do you do? I just deal as well. I'm not a big fan of sunglasses. Even whenever I didn't wear glasses, way before my eyes kind of went out on me, I still didn't really wear sunglasses when I hike. Every once in a while I'll wear sunglasses when I do a bike ride or maybe a run, but when I'm hiking I typically don't wear them. There was a little bit in 2015 where I picked some up and I thought I was going to use them whenever I was out on ridge lines, but ended up never using them. Got tired of carrying the weight and just kind of left them in a hiker box. Also, if you're on a trail like the AT, you typically never need sunglasses. They call it the green tunnel for a reason, because you're usually completely canopied by trees surrounding you all the way. So you don't typically need sunglasses, really only maybe whenever you're in the whites, some of the places in Maine where you're up on these high exposed ridgelines, would you really need sunglasses? But even then, I just kind of deal with it. When you purchase your hiking shoes, do you get a half size to full size larger than your non-hiking shoes? Yep. So I typically wear a 10.5 or an 11 in regular shoes, but in a hiking shoe I usually go with an 11.5 or sometimes even a 12, depending on how narrow the toe box is, for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I wear liner socks. So I'm a hiker that really prefers a liner sock to help prevent blisters, so I need a little bit of extra room in my shoe for that. But then also I usually go with a longer and bigger size because I have a really wide foot and my feet tend to swell as I hike, so I want to make sure that my toes aren't bumping up against my toe box and giving me a black toenail or something like that. So I typically go with a little bit bigger room. Both years that I was on the trail, I actually grew into those bigger sizes that I had, so I was really glad that I bought a size or a couple sizes up to make sure I had room for my feet to expand. Looking forward to seeing how the camper shapes up. Are you planning to replace the siding or remount the vintage stuff? So he's actually asking a question about our 1972 vintage travel trailer. It's a Lark, and Snuggles and I are recently renovating it so then we can move into it full time in August to be able to leave, travel more on the road, and do more adventures. So in answer to your question, we are using the vintage stuff. It's actually in really good shape. Needs to be bent back in a couple spots, but there's no like significant hail damage or anything from over the years. So we're just pretty much going to slap a coat of paint on the bottom half, and then on the top it'll actually polish out to bright chrome. So we're trying to keep the trailer as vintage as possible and trying to reuse as much as possible. Number one, it's a money thing. Number two, we're all about reusing and getting as much life as we can get out of something. And then number 3, we just want to keep it classic. We want to keep it vintage and try to restore it as close to what it can possibly be. If you haven't checked out my camper yet, I'll put a link up here to that video where I kind of give a quick preview to the start of the restoration project. And then I'll be having new videos coming out soon on our progress, so keep an eye out for those. All right guys, last questions of the day. 2 questions. You mentioned that you have seen families hiking the AT. Did they have small children with them? And do you know what type of tent they carry? And then the second question is, how are foreigners treated on the AT? So in answer to your first question, I've kind of seen a handful of different families. Most of the families that I've seen out on the AT had more teens with them, or maybe pre-teens. And then there was one time that we seen a really young pair of kids with their family that were through hiking, and they were maybe about 7 or 8 years old. And then of course a year ago there was a kid that was 5 or 7 named Buddy Backpacker that hiked the AT. Now I think he's actually hiking the Continental Divide Trail. So all different types of ranges of ages of children that are hiking the AT. As far as tents, I don't really know. I never really seen what type of tent they were carrying. I would assume that the ones with teens or a little bit younger, those kids were probably carrying their own solo tents where the parents carried their own. But the little ones, I don't really know. I never seen what type of tent that they were carrying. I just kind of passed them during the day on the trail. And how are foreigners treated on the AT? Just like any other hiker trash. Phenomenal. In 2015, I hiked with a guy from New Zealand for a little bit. And then in 2016, I hiked with a mom and daughter that were from Australia. Aside from that, met a lot of Germans on the trail, met a guy from Italy. So there are a lot of different people and cultures out on the trail. The great thing is, whenever you go out on the trail, you kind of leave your career and who you are in the real world behind and where you're from, and everybody just kind of becomes the same person because you're all doing the same thing together. So as far as your question goes, foreigners are treated great, just like all other hiker trash. Alright guys, so again, I'm going to try to keep doing these Q&As weekly. If you have any questions for me, you can either leave them in the comment box below or send me a video question, you asking me a question on a video, over to darwinonthetrail@yahoo.com, and then next week I'll feature it in my Q&A. If you haven't got a chance yet, go over and check me out on Instagram. I've been posting a lot of new photos lately of the trailer and of my prep hikes for my section of the Continental Divide Trail in April. Go ahead and like or dislike this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and as always guys, thanks for watching.